Hello, everyone. I am Nehemiah Frank with the Black Wall Street Times, and tonight we come to you with heavy hearts. Over the weekend, what began as a celebration of freedom, the Tulsa Juneteenth festival turned into a scene of tragedy and chaos. On Saturday night, just steps away from the historic Vernon AME Church, where gunfire erupted, one young man, just 22 years old, lost his life. 7 others ranging from the ages of 17 to 80 years old were injured. Some are still fighting to recover in the hospital now. This happened in Greenwood, a sacred space, the same space where we remember the resilience of our ancestors, now the site of another act of violence. Hundreds were there, families, kids, elders, all forced to run for safety. We've heard their stories, a pastor praying as people fell to the ground, a dance teacher shielding young girls behind her. A creator's live stream turned into a cry for help, and now in the aftermath, the city is proposing a new youth curfew. And we asked, will that stop what happened Saturday night? Because here's the truth. Witnesses say the gunman appeared to be between the ages of 18 and 25 years old. That means a youth curfew wouldn't have stopped him. Let's be clear. We're not against protecting our young people, but let's not get it twisted either. The real issue isn't just unsupervised youth. The real problem here in Tulsa and across Oklahoma and across the country is America has a gun problem. Curfews don't stop bullets. Community investment does. We need streetlights. We need mentors. We need jobs, safe spaces, and hope. We need to ask why young people are picking up guns instead of picking up opportunities. Now, Mayor Nichols has pledged stronger enforcement and long-term intervention, but now is the time to define what that really means, because Greenwood deserves more than symbolic fixes as has happened in past administrations. Greenwood deserves answers. It deserves change. So tonight we say their names in spirit. We hold space for the hurt, and we ask Tulsa city councilors, what will you do? What will you do now? A curfew is easy. Justice is harder, but it's justice we demand. Justice we demand for our kids, for our elders, for Greenwood. We will not look away. We will not be silent. We will keep pressing forward together. So thank you for joining me this late afternoon on the Black Wall Street Times platform for this critical conversation. And joining me this evening is our incredible managing editor, Dion Osborne, with the Black Wall Street Times. He also has a podcast called In Depth with Dion. And next is Cody Ransom, a community leader, historian, creator, writer, poet, all the things, someone who cares deeply about our youth. You probably saw his video that is definitely going viral at this point. You will hear from both of them tonight, but first we're going to start with our managing editor, Dion, who's going to give you a recap of what took place yesterday at City Hall's press conference. Dion, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Nehemiah, for putting this together, and I'm glad to be able to be having this conversation with both of you. Mayor Nichols was flanked by TPD, members of the FBI, and even the ATF, as he announced several new initiatives that will be hopefully used to address the gun violence epidemic taking place right now. So the biggest one that he's proposing and that they're hoping to pass this week under emergency is an expansion of the current curfew the city has. So the city already has a curfew for minors under 17 and under, which is 11 p.m. To 6 a.m. This proposed ordinance would create a curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for people under 17 and under within downtown, specifically the interdispersal loop around the freeway, which encompasses much of the Greenwood district. Along with that proposal that they're hoping to pass this week under emergency, they're also investing in, as you mentioned, crisis intervention. They have received a federal grant of, I believe, $2 million to invest in that. So there will be staffing teams to provide mentorship and crisis intervention. And the Tulsa Police Department is creating a new task force specifically to go after gun violence, which will be comprised of the city's the police department's special investigations unit, as well as forensics teams and other scientists who will work to try and solve the latest shootings that we've had, and any more generally. Along with that, there will actually be a downtown team specifically made up of police officers who will enforce this curfew. Now, what the proposal is, what it says currently, is that an officer will be able to ask someone's name, ask the reason that they're there, and if that person does not respond with a list of exceptions that proposed ordinance falls under, then the officer will be able to either tell them to go home, give them a fine of $200 on top of community service. So, it's unclear right now what kind of training these officers will be having to be stopping people. It's unclear how they will make assumptions about who may be under 18. There's a lot of lack of clarity right now, and I think the biggest concern is that the city council is proposing to pass this tomorrow at the 5 p.m. city council meeting under emergency, and if that passes, it'll take effect Thursday. Neo, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so to give a little, sorry about that. So to give a little context about the legacy between the Tulsa Police Department and the community itself, right? So the legacy of mistrust, the relationship between Tulsa's Black residents and police, it has been deeply flawed since the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, where white police officers were deputizing those in the mob. So that is the earliest part of the mistrust between the community, probably even before then. So the perception of over policing, many Black Tulsans already feel disproportionately targeted, making a curfew risk, reinforcing stereotypes, or leading to racial profiling. So we know that that's going to be one of the biggest issues that is going to come up. I think we've already kind of heard that yesterday at the press conference, and heard some rumbling in the community about teenagers feeling like they're going to be profiled. But yeah, so with that said, let's just go ahead and go to Cody Ransom, who held an event yesterday at his studio in Deep Greenwood, where teenagers or younger folks were able to talk about their concerns. And Cody Ransom, the floor is yours.
And I appreciate it. The event yesterday was, just a chance and an opportunity for us as adults to listen to young people. I think a lot of times we're trying to give them what we wish we had, and they're asking for something totally different. And so it was eye-opening for me because I already work with the youth quite a bit through sports and music and things like that. But one of the first questions that I had asked was, what's the most exciting or the most fun thing you've ever done in Tulsa, Oklahoma? And I think it was close to 75% of the kids who spoke at that time actually just said playing basketball. Wow. I as much as I love the sport, it did a lot for me, but that was not the most exciting part or most exciting thing I had ever done in my city, and so it reminded me that all the things that I had done are now gone. I went to Bells, I went to Big Splash, I went to Celebration Station. We rode go-karts, we would go paintballing. We had so many other things that we did, whereas these kids don't have that. And then what it also taught me was, they've been ignored for so long, they really don't know what to ask for whenever you give them the floor and say, you could say literally anything that you want. They could ask for anything in the world, and they literally just looked us in the face and were just like, I don't know what to say, And so, it's very important to me because as I look through, the windows of Greenwood and Archer, man, I don't see anything that is inviting to a 14, 15-year old. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing here for them when Greenwood was supposed to be that. If there was anywhere in the city that should have had something for them, it would be here. And then just being at the Juneteenth, these kids are invisible to most adults nowadays. And so when they feel that way, they react. And even with the shooting and all that, even not specifically knowing how old those people are, I'm willing to bet that they're in that early 20s age, and that they have felt the exact same thing. They are products of, Tyrants pointed it out yesterday, of social media, of cell phone, of detachment, of parents working multiple jobs, so no one's at home. They're gonna have to raise themselves. They roam around. They do roam around downtown on days that there's not festivals, but they have to roam because there's no one place that they could be going to. There's no. We had teen clubs, we had lock-ins, we had all of that, and so them not having it. Well, I can't speak for y'all, but me. Whenever they started to shut those things down, I started to try to sneak into the adult clubs, into the adult parties. I started trying to go to those because I didn't want to go to the places where the 10, 11-year-olds were going to be. I was too old for that. But I was also too young to do anything else that was available. So they're going to elect to go to the older events before they do the younger ones.
Were any of the teenagers or the younger people, and I have to use that loosely, right? Because there's two different demographics here. We have kids that are younger than 18, and then we have those who are older than 18 who we would probably still consider kids, but the law says otherwise. And so with that said, were there any of them who were at Juneteenth the night of the shooting, and what was their take of the whole situation?
Yeah, when we broke in a small group, there were two young ladies I talked to, and then two young boys. And what the young ladies said was, one of them said that she never wanted to go to another Black event. I had also heard that the night of Juneteenth, right after the shooting, I had heard a couple of different kids say that. Another one just said that it's gonna happen. So it was made up in his mind that large Black crowds, that was just gonna happen. And then another one actually chimed in and said, well, it's gonna happen in large white crowds too. Like anytime you're in big crowds, like people shoot. So
Right.
to them, they didn't know that this is, the entire time I've been going to Juneteenth, this is my first time experiencing that in this setting. But to them, even though it's only happened one time in their lifetime in this setting, they're so used to, if there's a crowd, there's going to be a shooting. Part of that is too, um, while we all appreciate news, they get it in real time too. So they're seeing that, oh, well, there's a shooting in this city, there's a shooting in this city, and they're just seeing crowds and associating crowds with, with danger, with those types of things. And then a few of them just said that they just been trying not to think about it. I mean, they would have been fairly close to where the incident happened. They definitely would have seen the aftermath of it, and then it's been all over social media too. So someone happened to record at least the young man on the ground, and felt the need to share that video online, and so now that's circulating through different group chats that these kids are in, or just pops up on the timeline as they're scrolling, just looking at other things, and so they're reliving that in that visual over and over.
Wow, that's crazy. So you bring up a really interesting point that I think many could miss, which is we were born during the age of the Columbine shooting, right? It's the first time where we see, you know, a group of kids being killed from gun violence. Besides what's happening in our own communities, but we're talking about random people, so not targeted folks. And that's another thing to also bring up. A lot of folks are in the police investigation, of course, it's still going on, but of course, we have our sources too. We're a news agency. The person who this alleged gunman, after he shot his target, right? It was told to us that this person started randomly just spinning around and just shooting in every direction into the crowd of folks running. So then you have, a 17-year-old that's hit, you have an 80-year-old woman that's hit, and other folks who are being, hit by bullets or the ricochets of bullets. And so that's one of the reasons why we did classify it as a mass shooting, to really try to take the stigma out of violence happening in our own community, because the truth is that violence happens in everybody's community. America is a violent country, so Black people are not inherently, violent. This is just something that has really been happening more and more. Now, I'm not saying that there's not variables that would have us, systemically, be more prone to having depression or having these other issues because of the systemic failures of our society, of us being Black people in this country. But there's two things that are happening here. We have youth who don't have nowhere to go, who the society has deemed them kind of like what Hillary Clinton did, classified them as super predators. But we're not really giving them the resources. You had mentioned that we have bails. I remember going to bails. I remember going to Celebration Station, even, Chuck E. Cheese, right? We were excited to go to these places. But I know that this is a completely different generation. They grew up in a country where mass killings is sadly a norm. So we can't just blame it on the youth and think that this curfew is going to solve an issue, because with policy, we've had policy violence against us, whether it was intentional or unintentional. We have a federal administration that is anti-DEI, when we've been asking for police oversight and for the police to be trained, have diversity and equity training when it comes to dealing with the Black community. And one of the things that jumped in my head the second I heard that they were going to do this curfew is I thought back and I called Dion. I said, Dion, you remember that story that we put out a few years ago about the two young boys that were walking in North Tulsa? Yep. And they were walking, there was no sidewalk. They did not have a sidewalk, so they had to walk in the street. And the kid ended up getting, physically abused and detained by the police officer. There's a horrific video of that happening. And so as Black people, we're concerned that, this curfew will have a detrimental effect on our kids. And I'm not saying that we don't need a curfew, but I think that the community should definitely have more of a stake when it comes to passing an ordinance like this. We should know exactly what the police training looks like when it comes. What is that interaction going to look like? Because they're dealing with our kids, they're dealing with Black kids, and if we already think that our kids are angry, right? If that's the perception, that our kids are angry because of COVID and a lot of lack of generational trauma that has happened. These police officers who don't even live in our community aren't going to give our kids the time of day, because they don't even really know how old we are, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I also I'm one of those people that when I look at things like that, I also see opportunity. I see an opportunity for um, specifically for black men to step in and say, you know what, if there's going to be this curfew, if that's that, this there's an extra 2 hour window now. So how many of us are willing to um I mean we drive our cars downtown anyway. We ride around and scope out different places and figure out where to park, hang out and talk. So how about we just, we post up in those hot spots where we know our kids are gonna be. And by our kids, I just mean black kids, don't have to belong to us. But how about we pop into those areas too? And that's just from if we're just doing that from 9 to 11, nothing's different than what it has always been. But the only thing that is different is those black kids see that black men are standing there, that black men are watching them and able to engage with them and talk to them, and try to repair that relationship because so many of them have never had um, not even positive or negative interactions with black men. So um, a lot of them, after they're done playing sports, that is the last time they have an interaction with a black man. And so for me, I'm in Greenwood literally all the time. I ride my bike around here. I jump on a scooter. I don't party. I don't club, but I ride around downtown because a lot of those kids that are now 18 to 24, I knew them when they were 6 or 7. I, coached them in ball, so I see them before they fight. I see them before they get into arguments, and so I'm able to, just kind of check the temperature. How you doing? What's going on? Oh, well, I don't like such and such up here trip. Okay, well, let's just go for a ride. Let's go. Let's walk over here. Let's do that. And so if you have the same way police department is going to show up in numbers, we have to have our community members out there because at the end of the day, as you pointed out, policy is not normally in our favor. And so if I'm waiting on that part to change, I'm going to lose a lot more kids
that's good.
than if I just decide, you know what, can I quote unquote inconvenience myself for 2 hours, a day for, let's say, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I can give up 6 hours of time. That still leaves me enough time that if I want to go out, I got plenty of time to go out. But I can go to these areas and just make sure if there is an interaction with an officer and one of our kids, I can be there for it to where at least I can help translate or diffuse the situation before it gets out of hand. Because this weekend wasn't the first time I've seen officers show up to a scene of violence and they're in in a good mood. They're joking and dapping each other up and talking about something that has absolutely nothing to do with the body that's right behind you. So I've seen that multiple times, and so it's I doubt that those things happen if our community is there in numbers too, especially in earshot and in eyeshot of what's going on. Those things happen when they see that there's nobody around. There's maybe one or two of them, and they're way over there. It's like no, we had a right and responsibility to be right there and to see what's going on, hear what's going on. Um, there is supposed to be a police shortage here, and so if it is, that's again even more opportunity for our own community to show up. And I don't want black women to have to bear that burden any more than they've already done it. They've already been trying their best to raise them and quite frankly, just keep them alive until they're 18. And so, the least we can do is step in and just say, look, we'll take it from here. So with this, um, how many of us are willing to go downtown? We can do it in shifts. We can do it in numbers. Maybe you only do it once a month, but if you know that other people are doing it on other days, and these kids consistently see that, kids and young adults, I guarantee you'll start to see a shift somewhere.
And I want to go to Dion, but one of the things that I could see happening. I know there's this task force that they're putting together, and to be honest with you, the second I heard the word task force, you already know where I'm at. I'm like, okay, well, we've had plenty of those. Now we do have a mayor he has a black son. He is interested, very invested in making sure that we have something that's actually going to work, for everyone, just regardless of the kid's color or race, right, or their zip code or where they live at. We want all of our kids in Tulsa to be safe. So hopefully, there will be more of a communal and police partnership. that is, you know, a holistic approach that I think Dr. Tiffany Crutcher has been trying to push for, you know, since she founded the Terrence Crutcher Foundation. And so hopefully, you know, there will be some good conversations to be had very soon. I know it's not going to, you know, happen before tomorrow's vote. But hopefully the city councilors are also thinking about these things. So Dion, you said that the city of Tulsa published some stipulations of the new curfew that's going to go into place.
Yes. Yeah. So if this passes, and I just want to say that I think that the city council should postpone this vote. I think the city council should give the people of Tulsa an opportunity to have public comment, not on the day they're already planning to vote on it. Whether this ordinance passes or not, to pass this under an emergency order and not give your citizens ample opportunity to weigh in, I think is undemocratic, first of all. And I think that rushing is how we miss the mark. So I would urge the city council to postpone this vote and give people more time to, at the very least, just share their concerns, share their thoughts. Maybe they have ideas for how this ordinance could be improved. More oversight in this ordinance. I don't see anything about oversight in this ordinance. Now, there are some exceptions. You know, a lot of people are wondering, well, if my kid works downtown or if my kid is driving through, there are some exceptions for youth under 17 and under who either are attending a ball game, a movie, a concert, a recreational activity, a spectator event, or if they work downtown or have to run some type of errand for their family. They are allowed to complete their task, but then they have to leave the downtown area as soon as they're done with that. Mm-hmm. And so in those cases, the officer would stop them, ask their age, ask their name, and their reason for being there. And if they have an exception that falls under the ordinance, then they will be allowed to complete that task and, you know, be on their way. But at the end of the day, again, the questions for me is like, how do you know the kid is even telling the truth about what they're doing, right? There's so much in this that comes down to the individual officer's discretion and perception that I think that we need more time. If we're going to do this ordinance, I think we need more time to figure out how to do it right to where it protects the officer and it protects that youth.
That's good. That's good. Cody, do you have a response to that at all?
No, I completely agree. I think that, you know, I think that task force should, you know, quite frankly, should consist of community members. You know, if we're gonna put that together, that there needs to be people there that can, like I said, at minimum understand. You know, I know a lot of Tulsa Motors that move here. They live downtown. They're moving here from bigger cities to where if they went out for a walk at 9:30 p.m., that's not unheard of. So for their kids or their son or daughter to be 16, 17 years old and you really can't go for a walk anymore, you know, versus those of us that are in this area a lot can actually step in that situation and say, oh no, like this kid lives right here. This kid literally walks every day. You know, this is what they do. But yeah, just rushing to a decision without, you know, just playing devil's advocate with your own decision and figuring out, you know, what does this actually look like? What happens if I don't pay the fine? What happens if you giving me the fine, I haven't paid the last one and you run my name to figure that out. So now am I going to jail because I was outside at 9:02 p.m. twice and I got caught, you know?
And who's paying the fine? Is it the kid or is it the parents? And what if the parent is coming from, you know, an economically challenged, you know, situation? Then, you know, we're being more harmful than helpful at that point. Or does the what is it, the volunteering or the community service hours, does that kick in? Like, what's the replacement for the $250? So I think there's a lot of questions that definitely need to be kind of hashed out, because the one thing we don't want to do is suppress a community that's already economically challenged because it's just going to make the situation that much more, mentally difficult to maneuver.
Now, I do respect, what the mayor is doing when it comes to these long-term solutions, crisis intervention. I forgot to mention that he is, he's the first mayor to create this Office of Family and Children's Service, Office of Family and Children's and Youth, Family and Children, I believe, and dedicating funding to it. And so, the long-term solutions are being worked on. As I was not there when the shots rang out, and when I was scrolling through and seeing all the people that I love and care about talking about how they were dodging bullets, seeing the senior pastor of Vernon AME Church, the only structure, one of the only structures to survive the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, saying on a live video that he's never had to dodge bullets before, it's painful. And I understand the need for safety and the need to take action. Like, we do have to have something in the short term, right? But again, to what y'all are saying, I think that we have to postpone this. I think we can stand to wait another week, wait 2 more weeks to have more community input, to have more evidence-based experts weigh in on this, so we can determine how we get this as good as we possibly can, so that we don't have to worry about addressing civil rights violations on the back end.
Right, that's good. I had brought up earlier the situation of like stigma, right? One of the kids that was at the event yesterday that Cody Hill had mentioned, they don't want to go to another Black event. And so, we even ourselves have this internalized racism where, we're trying to rid ourselves with. That only comes from, learning, right? Going on a Black Wall Street tour, to learn about the greatness of our community, and our place in in the broader American story. But there's this, stigma, and going back to why we called it, we chose to say a mass shooting, because if this would have been Mayfest, this would have been a mass shooting. We don't know if the individuals that were tussling or shooting were even in a gang, right? We just know that gun culture in America is alive and well, and that's what the fact is at this point. But when the mainstream media and people who don't look like us, and maybe even some of us that look like us, have these perceived, thoughts about, okay, if I go to this event, I got to be extra careful because Black people are dangerous. And Cody already mentioned, I've been going to Juneteenth in Greenwood since I was like 5, maybe probably before that, before OSU was built. And I had never seen even a fight out there. I've seen people look at each other, for in a certain way and those types of things. But I've never heard people really hollering at each other or anything like that. I've never seen violence happen in a family event such as Juneteenth or Legacy Fest. And so there's there's already communities. How do you want to say? So the community, you can tell the community is already feeling stigmatized just by the way that this ordinance is written, because it says, it's focused on one regional area, the downtown area. And I'm seeing on social media that folks from our community are saying, why not, what about these other places? Because the kids don't just hang out downtown, they hang out everywhere.
Right.
So what are y'all thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'll say that there has been there have been just this week. There's been multiple shootings this week. One happened at Juneteenth. Another happened on the east side of Tulsa. Another happened at Crybaby Hill. So if I can't go down to the Greenwood district at 9 p.m., then I should not be able to go to the gathering place, because the gathering place closes at 10 during the summer. So I can go over to the gathering place, and that's totally fine. But I have to leave my house to get to the gathering place. So how am I supposed to transport from here to the area I can be in without going through the area that I'm restricted to be in? Like that doesn't really make sense. it's not going to curb the shootings that have happened in Midtown or in the South Side or on the West Side. That so if we're putting that, we will feel stigmatized because it is primarily in the area that we're in, specifically in Greenwood, and it's a reaction to one shooting, which is what I had the conversation with the kids about. I wasn't I wasn't as upset as I was when I did that video because it happened at Juneteenth. Because Juneteenth, of course, is a result of a symptom that had been rearing its head for decades, and it was just every generation got you just had less respect for the elder generation, and it's gotten to a place to where it's my generation. It's we wouldn't shoot in a situation like that, but we may have fought in a situation like that. They're now in a place to where they have access to guns a lot, easier than people did when I was their age,
A
and so
lot.
they escalate the exact same. They're having the exact same beefs. They're having the exact same confrontations. Their way of solving those confrontations are just different, and they're not just going to do it in the IDL. It does not matter where if they're doing it at if it's happening at Airbnbs and it's happening at Crybaby Hill and it's happening on the South Side. Then again, if we're gonna do the ordinance, okay, but it does have to be all over. It cannot just be in this particular area because again, I sit on Greenwood, I also watch white kids ride around on scooters. But at 16, 17 years old, there is nowhere for them to go if they wanted to go enjoy themselves. So Lime scooters have, in most cities, those Lime scooters are a way of commuting from one place to another. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's something young kids go do, younger people go do. Those of us that are a little bit older, we might ride a scooter for a little bit, but we'll just take a Uber over to where we're trying to go. These kids have no destination. They're just going around downtown on the Lime. If they see a bunch of people, they stop, see if they know anybody. If they don't, they're right on going to the next hill or the next bridge to get over. Like, so to eliminate all of that, but just for the ones that are in this area, that seemed very very urban renewalish of the city to say like, hey, no more theaters, no more skating rings, no more any of that. We'll get rid of all of that north of the IDL. And so then after it's gotten rid of, then it's, well, how come you guys are just hanging out outside? How come you're not doing anything? It's like, well, you took everything that I could do. And so there's already so little for people of that age to take that away from them, but only in their area does seem just, it's a rush for sure.
And so before we go, I want to give the audience, those who are looking, we got 82 people on this live. If you have questions that you want to bring up, please bring them up in the chat, and then we'll pull them on the screen and we can kind of talk about those. Dion, was there anything else that you found really interesting about the proposal that the city is planning to put out tomorrow?
Well, I mean, to be completely honest with you, the motivation is interesting to me. I think the way this proposal was written up, and not to call anybody out, but City Council Vice Chair Karen Gilbert is taking the lead on this, and she mentioned in the press conference that she's consulted with business owners downtown about this for weeks. This wasn't just in response to the Juneteenth shooting, as far as some of the planning at least. But the rollout and the urgency of trying to pass this now, I believe, is in response to the Juneteenth shooting to show the city that, hey, we're doing something. But I think this is for the business owners. I think this is for those bar owners who are worried about people hanging around and the underage crowd cruising around. And I think this is something that is more about optics, to be honest with you. I think this is about making business owners, and mostly white business owners, feel safe. Because to be completely honest, when we kind of bring in the facts and the data, which I'm grateful some people on social media have started to do, crime is down in every single category, including violent crime in Tulsa since 2021. And I believe at the press conference, Police Chief Larson even said that the last unsolved murder was in 2020, was like over a year ago. And so, um, again, that's why I urge us to really postpone this knee jerk reaction, to give us time to really come up with something that is more comprehensive and equitable.
So I want to mention next Tuesday, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher and the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, they're actually hosting an event. And, her organization has been phenomenal when it comes to canvassing and, getting a good temperature of what the community really wants. Knocking on doors, doing polls, all of that. And I know that they're putting something together. I don't have a lot of details, but that's going to actually be happening next week. And so I think it's really important that, perhaps, postponing a major decision that could be detrimental if it's not executed properly. And I could say dangerous policy for Black and even brown children, brown kids who fall under the age of 18, it could be detrimental for them. Um, and so I proposed, just waiting until next Wednesday. I know that we're a media company, but we're a media company with a purpose, and we care about our community.
And I just want to say we're human beings, and a lot of the times as reporters, we're expected to not take a stance on anything out of fear of being seen as biased. But at the end of the day, we're human beings, and it's our responsibility as reporters to uphold democracy, to be that fourth estate, to be that check on power. And I think this is one of those situations where, instead of asking if they're gonna bring the gang unit back, like one of the reporters asked at that press conference, which I think was just an out of line question, they should be asking, how do we make sure that due process is incorporated into any response that we have to this violence?
That's good. That's good. Well, any last words, y'all, before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I would just encourage everybody that's on here, regardless of what decision they make, um, show up anyway. If we know that if it's starting at 9 p.m., pick a shift. If it's I can be there for 30 minutes once a week, I can be there for 15, I can be there for an hour. It's I I think I wholeheartedly believe that when kids and young adults even when they see people and they engage with people, once they have a connection, it's a little bit different. They tend to kind of taper their reactions to things even just a little bit. So even if that goes from because Dion was there, it may have gone from a shooting to a fist fight. We don't like to see the fist fight, but because he or she had respect for somebody they saw there, and that small interaction changes to where they at least think about it for a half a second versus not thinking about it at all. But if we don't have that, if all they have is police presence that's there, um, when the police pulled up to Greenwood after the shooting, these young people were bucking up to the police that are outside with ARs, that they've got rifles and bulletproof vests and all of that, and these kids with nothing in their hand are willing to buck up to them. So what do we think is going to happen if these kids are also in a downtown area, which lighting won't be an issue anywhere else downtown, but in Greenwood, lighting is an issue. Our street lights almost never work for longer than 2-3 weeks at a time. But if they're in an area that may not be, an area of surveillance, that may not be an area that's well lit, their interaction, with these officers might be different. Those same ones that I saw laughing and giggling at the scene of a murder may be the ones that are on this patrol. And the one thing about it is the chief doesn't know which ones it was. So the lieutenant doesn't know which one they were. So they don't know which officers are actually the ones that are going to be like this when they run into these people. But that accountability will be a little bit different. If there is no oversight, then we're the oversight. We do have the right to be there. I don't have to leave by 9 p.m. I'm a little bit older than than 17. So before I go, enjoy myself at a bar or anything like that, why not just swing through and sit for a few minutes just to make sure any kid, black or white, going through this area is not being treated any way other than, with respect and as a human. And when we see that, we can keep our own data and our own logistics on what this is actually looking like, if it's working, if it's not working. And that way it's not just one person going to city council or going to the mayor saying, hey, I don't think this is working. This is multiple people that have been taking a shift and compiling data over a span of a month or so and saying like, hey, we told you this was an issue. Here's the data to prove it. Or we might see it and say, hey, this has been amazing. Now it's time to roll it out into other areas that we're seeing shootings happen in. They should be all over the city. So it may even change some of our minds when we see it. I doubt it, but just might.
That's good. Dion, any last closing words?
Just that whatever the city does, it needs to be under the direction of the people. And so the city needs to give appropriate amount of time for the people to weigh in.
Got it. All right, y'all. Well, that's it. I'd say show up at the city council meeting tomorrow just to see if they will be discussing this and trying to push it through. You have the right to ask questions. If anything, try to talk to your city councilors before to see what proposals are going to be in this ordinance that is supposed to land on Thursday at 12:01 p.m. or 12:01 a.m. It's supposed to go into effect. And to think again, our community has been definitely over-policed. Our kids have been overly represented. And I guess that's it. All right, y'all. Peace out.
All right.
Peace.